You're alive, hopefully. We'll see. Maybe. I also don't have it plugged in here, so we'll just use the old-fashioned Bible eventually. All right, how's y'all's week going?
Good.
Pretty good.
Pretty good?
Good.
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 I'm very caught up in all of your lives now. Thank you. I know everything that's going on. We should start this the way I forced our 18 to 25 class to start. I make them do what's called highs and lows, like a high of a week and a low of a week. We should do that because then it'll just waste time until people decide they want to actually tune in. So let's do that. Let's do highs and lows this week. So, hi Wade, would you like to talk
Hi,
about
Adam.
Something that's happened to you that's been a high?
A high this week, Sunday afternoon, I got to go fishing, so that's always good. Don't get to do that very often, but it was a good trip and had a good time.
Good.
Lows?
Did you actually catch anything?
Yeah, we caught a few little small ones. We mainly running my son-in-law's boat that caught on fire Thanksgiving, and he got it fixed, and everything run good first time he's run it, so everything went good. And we said, well, we're out, we might as well fish. So we fished a little while.
Did you have a low?
No, not really, no.
Good.
Everything's
All
been
right.
good.
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 Good. How about you, Scott?
High is Anita retired, the low is Anita retired.
We're live, Scott. We're live now.
You think.
Uh-oh.
But she can always come back and watch.
Anita's typing? What? No. Okay. All right. How about you guys?
High, we got to see grandchildren through Monday morning. Low, Joe's starting income tax work, and that puts stress in the home.
She's already told me the lows.
Huh?
You've
Yeah,
already
that's
told.
our
You've already
lows.
said
Yeah,
the lows
yeah.
for me.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. It's not. I still got to finish that. You're right.
Dick Jones did call though at lunch, and all a bunch of we always ate together on Tuesday for
A lot of the guys in the Sunday school class get together on Tuesday.
Well,
Yeah.
different Sunday school classes, but we've been doing it for a long time. He said he's doing a lot better today.
Really? That's good.
And, he felt real good about it. He's got a good positive attitude. He always does.
Wow. Well, that's good. All right. Highs are it's been a good week. We started our softball stuff last night, so that's good and bad. But I do enjoy. I get to coach my daughter's softball team, and so we started that all back up last night, and then yeah, I have plenty of lows. None that really matter. So.
As a coach, you'll
Yeah.
have a lot of lows. People hollering at you.
He lives in a house with 4 women.
The
Yeah.
very reason I became coach was because not because of the parents, but because the coaches were the lows of the last team. So
You're live.
Yeah, I am live. It's okay. I got fired for being too positive. So we'll just say that's how the last coaching team was. So I started coaching in the fall, and that ends up really nice because you get kind of stuck in, as a pastor, you get stuck in the church groups, so you don't have a lot of outside of the church influences, and so it's nice to be able to
So true.
go out there and just be in the outside world. It sounds so weird, but it's true. But
And we need that. We need to do that. So that's great.
and it looks like a couple people are watching. So if you're tuning in, I'd love to hear highs and lows of y'all's week as well. So drop us a comment so we can. That sounded so lame. Drop us a comment. Drop us a like. Make sure you share. Sound like a YouTube peddler now.
So people probably know that me and you and Wade all week, we were talking about Esther this week. We went and watched The Chosen last night, and I don't remember what the holiday was, but the Jews were telling a story about Esther. That was their story. When they mentioned the name of Haman, which probably is not going to mean anyone to someone who wasn't watching, he was like the evil guy in the story. He got his head cut off. And when they mentioned the name Haman, the children and the man all hissed like a snake, which is bringing to light the serpent, which
Yeah.
everything about that story, I know they can't
Well,
see
yeah.
the board, but we've got a board over here that has,
It would not help you if you saw the board because there's just a whole bunch of colorful chicken scratch. So
That
don't
was
stress too much about that.
About an hour's worth of going through Esther real
Yeah.
quick. And, you know, we
3 hours.
we talked Sunday night about, you know, the things that it's helped us, this Bible study on Sunday nights, what it's helped us when we're reading. And it's making it clearer that as we read through Esther that, man, everything is basically the same story over and over and over again. And it's like we were picking out that Haman was Satan in the Esther story. And
everything was going back to
yeah,
Eden.
and pointed all back to the reason we need Christ. And so it was pretty
I
cool.
feel like I should fill in a little bit more how we even got to this point. We don't come together and we're like, hey, let's sit down and do a Bible study. Wade was like, hey, before I go and see this awesome production of Esther on stage, I wanted to see if that we could get together and read through Esther and let's just see what it says. And so then I was like, that's a good idea. And then he sat down and started reading verse 1. And like 3 hours later, it was like chapter 10, we finally finished. And so it was very much an impromptu Bible study, but it was fun because I have not studied Esther. I don't think I've ever really done a deep study into Esther ever.
But the
So it was
first
fun to
thing
kinda-
we found out that the book of Esther never one time mentions God. Mm-hmm. Not one time is God's name brought up or anything like that. That was interesting.
Another good thing that we found out was Wade was reading it, and you were stopping him, and you go, "Did everyone catch what that just said?" And when you break it down instead of waiting until the end of the story, what'd you get out of that? When you go line by line and go, "Oh yeah, that's talking about Satan, or that's talking about Eve, or that's talking," you know, it was easier even for the simpleton that I am to figure out this instead of waiting till the end of the chapter. And I go, okay, well, what I got out of it was, okay, Esther was a Jew and wanted to make sure the Jews were not killed.
Right.
What's really funny is that as you're reading through these different narratives, do you notice that like it's almost like you're not even reading the actual story itself, like kind of what we were talking about. By the end of it, it was not really about what the people were doing, and it was like those things were happening, and it was definitely for sure. But there was like this meta narrative that was happening in play, overarching theme kind of thing or
You
whatever.
read it looking to find those things, like the repeated words and the symbolism that comes up and that kind of stuff. So,
And
with open eyes instead of just reading the story.
yeah, I've
Because
heard
even Esther's not mentioned a whole bunch of times. I mean, the story's more about
Mordecai.
and
the king.
and Haman and the king. Esther just kind of played a part in it at the beginning and there at the end. But yeah,
Well, now we've talked a bunch about Esther. I feel like we should have actually just done something in Esther.
Esther'd be a good
Yeah.
one of these studies. I mean, I would think you could do it within a couple of weeks, probably.
well, we did it in a couple hours.
Yeah, but well,
At least
okay,
something.
you said that, and you're talking about 3 weeks, probably.
It does bring up a good thing that I don't think I've pointed out often is one of the things that seems to be happening in Esther, and we're not Esther, professionals here at any point, but is there will be times where the Bible is writing specifically about an individual like this king that's in the Esther story, King A, as we'll call him, because it's Ahasuerus, whatever it is, kind of a mouthful, potentially Xerxes. But when you're reading it, it's like he's clearly a king, things are happening in it, but then there seems to be, when you're looking at it from more of the patterns and stuff, and you're kind of placing people in the points of like, okay, well, Esther is acting more like, such and such, and Haman is acting more like the serpent, and Mordecai seems to be acting more like Jesus in this narrative. But then you get the king, and you're seeing that the king at some point in the story, when reading it like that, it shifts from a human king to almost like God, and you're starting to see this pattern that's unfolding where God will have this intercessor that will take place, and he'll work through the intercessor to bring out judgment, all these kind of things. So the king, you're reading about King A, but it's somehow talking about two different people, because you can clearly see the drunken babbling king King A, but then at some point it's the reverential king and the one who will uplift those who follow him and stuff, and it almost like is speaking from a God standpoint and patterns, and it's strange to read it like that because you're getting really a good contrast of human kings and God kings, but it's all through the same king somehow, and it's not that the human king is good, it's just that we've shifted into more of like a allegorical type reading of whatever's happening in Esther, and so that was a mouthful of
So you made a comment that that guy was potentially Xerxes. This is the same Xerxes that in the 300 the Spartans were fighting against?
Without doing any greater depth of research, I believe so. I believe that's who, because we're dealing with Persia, the Persian king, that they think maybe could be Xerxes, and some Bible translations even just put Xerxes in it.
Well, it sent back to the Step Bible sent me back to what I say earlier, Ezra.
Ezra, yeah.
Yeah, and there's too many here. I don't remember what it was, but it said in the reign, and it listed some history there of who, and I want to say something was said. I don't remember. Anyway.
Yeah, it talked about this king in Persia,
Yeah,
the
I
King
can't
A
remember
in it repeated that Sir of the Citadels. It repeats that phrase in Ezra.
Talked about the beginning of King A's reign.
Yeah.
Back in Ezra.
Yes.
So
Yeah. So you should just come hang out up here sometimes. We have impromptu, long Bible studies and books for who knows what. Really, it's just him reading and me running around this room going, "What in the world's happening? This is crazy."
I don't know if that's not better, that he's reading and then you can stop us and go, did you catch that? And so I got more out of that than going through, a whole chapter and then, okay, what'd you get out of it?
Yeah.
I didn't get anything, or, I got the meat of what they're trying to say, but not the underlying, where it's tying back to Eden.
Yeah. It takes training to have eyes to see some of that stuff. And I don't know if it's like, I'm not above thinking that this type of reading of scripture where it comes to seeing like the patterns and the repeating, elements that seem to happen. I know that kind of takes a different type of brain. I've always kind of enjoyed more the artsy type side of things. And so for me, the analytical, chronological, historical and stuff, that's never really meant much to me. That always felt like memorizing facts and history. And so for me, once I realized like how the literature was working behind it, I could start to see like the genius of it. But I understand that isn't what gets some people's juices flowing. My wife is kind of the opposite of that. Like, she's more amazed that all this stuff lines up in history, and I think she would be more amazed of more like the analytical type mindset as opposed to the abstract mindset. So I wouldn't think it's super. Don't be discouraged if for some reason you're like, I'm not seeing this pattern. I don't see what he's talking about. It's not. That's what's brilliant about scripture is you don't have to. Like this, it's life-changing the way that it needs to be for you because it's alive.
that's back in Ezra. Is that who you're talking about?
Artaxerxes, it just I don't know. I'd have to look and see.
It said back in the
Persia, yeah.
days of Cyrus.
Yeah, that might be him.
Yeah. Darius and all them. Yeah.
So Nebuchadnezzar comes along when?
Well before the Esther story.
Okay.
So Babylon is conquered by Persia. And so chronologically, Daniel's already happened.
I know it said something about Darius. Where did we talk about Darius? And that's Darius the Mede, I guess. That was who conquered.
Darius, king of Persia.
Well, I don't know. Possibly is that Darius the Mede?
I'd have to look.
Darius
the
Mede is when the Medes conquered the Babylonians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's all part of what sets up in Daniel as far as the kingdoms that will come afterwards. And it talks about the Medes and the Persians after Nebuchadnezzar's son doesn't repent and he ends up dead. That's in Daniel 5. And I'm not some Bible genius that knew that was in Daniel 5. I literally read Daniel 5 yesterday, so don't be amazed at how amazing I got it down to the chapter.
That's my favorite. Daniel
Is
would
it?
be my favorite. I know you said that you're considering that for one of the Bible studies, and I'm all for it. I'm also for the Genesis, but if you're taking a
poll.
a poll, I want the first few books of Genesis before John. But
Yeah.
I think
Was
it
that
would be-
Sunday that I mentioned that?
Yes.
I think it
I
was.
think it'd
said,
be cool to do John too, though, to see how that relates back to some of these stories that we've gone through already too.
I told him on Sunday that anything I can do to guarantee that I'll keep a job, I'll try to do so. I'm always pre-planning that next class, and so we have a couple options. Genesis 1 through 11 is just so foundational to the way you read the rest of Scripture, and so we could do a really good deep dive on Genesis 1 through 11, or we could shift gears and go to a bigger overview of John and how John is using all of this stuff brilliantly to prove kind of his thesis. So I just put it out there, and if you're at home or you're in here and you guys have a preference towards which one or not, just let me know, and we'll kind of do that. So, yeah, cool. Okay, that was good enough, right? We're good, you guys.
you getting any questions?
Nope, we got 5 people listening, and nobody wants to talk to us, and we're
Who's
not that
listening?
cool. So I don't know. I just see a number. If you're listening, say hi.
It's 'cause
So
you're
I
not
know
on
who's here.
Facebook, you're on YouTube. Huh?
Tell them highs and lows that you wanted to hear that.
I did. That was probably before 5 people were listening.
They're gonna drop off if they have to do that.
Hey, Lauren, you can stop doing what I told you to do and opening up 5 different browsers and logging in so it looks like people are watching. Yeah. So you guys weren't able to be at the class on Sunday night, and actually my recording did not turn out for that. Imagine that. I love technology so much. Hello, Carlene. We got a new face here. I like that. That's good. But what? How about y'all help fill in some of, if you remember anything that we actually talked about 2 nights ago?
We talked about how the different chapters lined up basically the same. What was it, 37, 38, 39?
Mm-hmm.
And how they were basically the same or whatever.
What was the narrative that we talked about specifically in 39? Do you remember?
Sibling rivalry.
Yes, but through what story? I'm testing your knowledge here.
And that's
Well,
In 39.
Joseph and his family with all the brothers selling him, and then you had Judah.
Judah and Tamar. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And then Sunday night we talked about.
there was a veil. There was some deception.
I know, but through what story?
Well,
Where- we
that's
go back
Tamar,
to-
and
Yes.
she was the daughter-in-law that put a veil over it, and Judah thought it was a prostitute.
Yep.
a shrine
That was 2 weeks. That was
prostitute.
2 weeks ago. So then Sunday night was. We're going to go backwards in time and go back
Talking
to.
about clothes, clothing.
Joseph is down in
There you go.
Egypt.
And what occurs in Joseph down in Egypt? The first thing that happens down in Egypt is he's going to go through his own temptation of a woman.
Oh yeah,
Except that woman is the one who's going to be tempted, and she's going to be tempted Potiphar's wife. Yeah. And so the importance of kind of reading 37, 38, and 39 all in a big chunk is where you really start to see how this is all working. Because you're going to see you've got the 2 seeds clearly lined up. As far as the seed of the woman being the more godly one, this is the one that obviously is now in Egypt and is in Potiphar's house, and God keeps blessing him and raising him up in the situation he's in. And you got Judah, who's going out of his way to really mess things up. Now we're going to go back to this temptation, and we're going to see how Joseph will do it right, and it's amazing. But one of the big things we dwelt on a couple weeks ago with Judah and Tamar is it just sort of feels like Judah gets away with it. Like it just is like, okay, he had 2 kids with his daughter-in-law, but okay, we're good. Like moving on, which is good. That intuition is really good because what you see is Joseph does nothing wrong and ends up getting the punishment. He ends up in prison. and both of which, Levitical and Egyptian law, both say that both men should have died, should be dead. So it's working on a whole bunch of different levels, and it's replaying this pattern of the, being tempted with something that man thinks is good for them, and it leading to potential death and destruction, and then overcoming temptation with the thing that, man seems is good, but doing what's good in God, and God keeps working behind that and elevating them up wherever they are. I think is another thing that we didn't actually touch on, but wherever they are, Joseph keeps getting elevated up in prison, like enslaved, and we're like, well, I mean, that kind of still sucks. Why couldn't you just get him out of prison and out of slavery, So that's what we talked about on.
Well, another of the discussions that we've had was how Daniel and Joseph and Daniel's stories are, both of them get thrown in prison, I guess behind different circumstances, but the stories kind of overlap.
Very much so. And when you go down a deep dive, even all the way down to the phrasing, it takes place. It's like in the third year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, and the third year of Joseph, who will be under under Pharaoh. They're going to interpret dreams that keep both kings awake. These dreams will have certain connections to them. Both Joseph and Daniel end up in a pit. One is filled with lions this time instead of no water. There's just connection after connection, which again is just that it's what we discover reading Esther the way that we read. It's just the patterns have been set, and now it's just how this pattern is going to continually just shift and change and show that every single way that man can try to do it will end up failing ultimately, and it's going to necessitate Jesus. It's going to necessitate a different kind of man to come and fix that problem. And so, there's a lot of overlap in Daniel, just like there seems to be some pretty big overlap when it comes to Joseph, Daniel, and Esther. If you look at that, and they're still in exile, they're still in a foreign country, they're still enslaved by something, man ruling over them. All of those is that big picture meta-narrative of we are not in Eden anymore. We have allowed the beast to rule us. And so we needed someone to conquer that beast so that we will one day be exodused out of this land into the new land.
And we talked about too that the line of he come through Judah, not through who was it? Joseph. Yeah. And that kind of wow, but that was different.
Further showing that we just don't. It's like God's not listening to us, and we're like going, I don't think you should have gone through Judah. You should have gone through Joseph. You should have gone through Joseph. But one of the things that we talked about on Sunday night is, should he have gone through Joseph, really? Human wisdom says, and it's a trap, they're setting you up, if you would have picked the two, you'd pick Joseph. Joseph is innocent. Everything keeps happening to him. He's got some quirkiness about him, maybe, about telling on his brothers or whatever it may be. And we kind of elevate him up into this position. But it's setting you up because Joseph will have a King David moment where he will see something and take something. He will fall and he'll fail. And that one single fault and failure will end up in 400 years of many people existing in a pit enslaved. And so human wisdom would be like, go through Joseph. Judah is the one who sold that one brother into the slavery. Joseph will cause hundreds of thousands of people to be enslaved in Egypt. And then you go, okay, I don't actually know it's the right call, God. So you just keep staying in control.
Yeah.
But you don't ever talk about Joseph like that, which is one of the things that kind of was brought up about the character of Joseph. Yeah, Joseph's a great character, and he's got really good, godly, characteristics that we can, that compel us to want to be more like God. But he's still human.
And we kind of touched on that a little bit with the Jonah story too. We've always heard Jonah was a hero and did what God told him to do, but yet when you really dig into it and look at it, Jonah was running away.
Yep.
Even at the last second when he went and preached.
Yep.
And said a couple of words and took off again.
Yep. And then you're going to see a direct connection in Esther to that same very moment. You remember when that hit? When he was reading yesterday, he read somebody else in the Esther story does exactly what Jonah does. He goes out and he sits outside of the city and he weeps, as opposed to Jonah, who goes out and sits out in the city and fumes. And he's fuming at the fact that the Ninevites are repenting, even though he never once mentioned God. Meanwhile, Esther will never mention God. But this guy will go out and weep for the fact that the Jews will die.
Mordecai.
Yeah. And you're going, oh, whoa. I mean, uses the same phrasing. You were reading it like word for word exactly what happens with Jonah. And again, it's just that repeat pattern. You're getting slight pictures of the completeness of who Jesus will be. Right? The one who will weep for the Jews, but also for the Gentiles, for the non-repentant. The one who through death and through, as an innocent man, will go through death and resurrection and will bring a famine-perished world new, manna, new bread and wine through him, And you just see all these little tidbits, this Christological, typological, fancy words for. There's little tiny pixels of Jesus being posted all over this place, and as you put them all together, you start to see the complete picture of Jesus. So,
No questions yet?
now they're bored; they're sleeping. It's their lunch nap time.
Somebody needs to ask a question.
Hi, Tracy. How are you? If you're still here.
Tracy
Pakakra.
So I don't know. It was the first time you mentioned about what Judah and representing Judas, and he sells Joseph for pieces of silver. Did you mention that? Was that Sunday night, or did we talk about it last week?
The week before.
Okay.
Yeah, we mentioned about him selling and how that will relate to Judas. But then we also, not to keep bringing back Esther, but apparently we're supposed to study Esther. Did you catch that selling of selling from silver in the Esther story? Haman will go before the king and will offer a large amount of silver for the life of the Jews. And mind you, Jews is just a fancy word for Yehudas, followers of Judah. And so we just get these little tiny pictures of we're going to take something that happened in one little instance and somehow make it bigger. Now it's going to not just be one man enslaved in Egypt. Now there's going to be, thousands of people enslaved in Egypt. Or one man sold for 40 pieces of silver to whole Jews sold for pieces of silver in death to now we're going to get to Jesus, who will be sold innocently from pieces of silver by his own brother, by Judah, not his physical brother, but you know what I mean, by Judas, by Judah himself. And you're like, yep, Jesus is just Joseph again as well, and Judah somehow. And you're like, mind is blown, because how could you ever?
So that's what's good about the Step Bible too. You can click on those names, and it'll tell you what their names mean. Like King A from yesterday in Esther, his name meant
I will be silent and poor.
Yeah,
And
That's a
that's-
long
and he
name.
was, because he let first Hazar, I guess that was right, his name right, Hazar. He let Hazar write the law about killing the Jews, and then after he was killed and Mordecai came up, he let Mordecai write the laws to stop the Jews from being killed. And
Yep.
it's just neat that the name fit.
Well, and he makes the first decree he makes is that women will be subservient to their husbands, and then he goes silent the rest of the story while his wife is the one who makes the choices and decisions, through the help of Mordecai, and she's the one whose voice reigns free, which is a play on the words back in Eden, because Adam, you listened to the voice of your wife and ate the fruit. He's going to have that painful toil and that kind of thing. And so now it's going to be playing with, okay, when should they listen to their wife? When shouldn't they listen to their wife? Who's in control here? The patriarchal system says that the man needs to be in control, but then also you're going to see that these women are working behind the scenes, and it's God is using them to affect all of this change.
Yeah, that's the same with Joseph when he's the king there, Potiphar. Listened to his wife, and she was saying that Joseph tried to rape her or whatever, and yet that wasn't nowhere near the truth. But he listened to her and sent Joseph to prison because of it, And
she was the one who was tempted, just like Eve was. She saw him and that he was good looking and desirable, and she wanted him, and they end up naked, and he ends up in prison. And so you see the comparison of when the woman is acting like God or acting like, acting under God's behalf or not. What's brilliant is when you start to read the Bible through those eyes as well, and seeing how, just like in Esther, God is moving through the women and you don't even realize it. And sometimes ironically, like in the story, in the opening of Exodus, you get a Pharaoh who doesn't know Joseph and his descendants, and he hates the Israelites. There's too many of them. They're literally being fruitful and multiplying, if that sounds familiar, just in the wrong land, the wrong house, the wrong people. They're enslaved. And so he makes a decree. And do you remember what the decree is that he makes of the Israelites to protect him and his kingdom, revolving around the firstborns?
That all the firstborn be killed?
Yes. That as these Jewish women, as they have Israelite women, as they have children, they're to be killed. They're to be cast out. And he says, so that we want to kill these boys, only if they're boys. If they're girls, who cares? But if they're boys, we want to kill them because I don't want, he says in here, he wants to deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and if war breaks out and they join our enemies and fight against us and escape from the land. So he wants to kill all the boys because he doesn't want them all to be fruitful, multiply, and to overtake him and to run, to get out of the land, escape the land, right? So now what's going to happen is this man is going to make this decision, and babies are being killed, except one woman will come and one woman who will have a child will protect that child by building a literal ark. The word is ark. We call it a basket, but it's the same exact word as Noah's ark. It will be put in the water. Another woman will watch to keep it safe, his sister, until Pharaoh's own seed will come and take the baby and raise the baby as her own. And so all of the men that Pharaoh were afraid of, his downfall was through the women.
And yet that kind of lines up too with Esther, I guess, the king there taking a Jew as his wife, and then with the Pharaoh.
Yep. And Haman, who is so, he just hates somebody. Who does he hate? He hates Mordecai. He doesn't have a problem with Esther. Esther's fine. Esther's the one who's moving the heart of the king. Now through Mordecai, but Mordecai's helping work together. That's how you get in the full picture of what Jesus will be. But it's that. But think for us, like that seems so disconnected. But statistically speaking, most men end up back in church because of the women. Most women are the ones who will drive men back to church. That's just how it works these days. And it's like, in fact, I'm a very testimony of this, because the reason we live here in Texas is because God moved through Lauren first. Lauren's all family lives all up in Indiana. All my family lives here. And so God knew that he was going to have to stir her heart, because I could never be like, hey, I think you should leave your family and come down here. So on our drive back from Texas, almost 7 years ago, she was like, I don't know why, I just feel like we're supposed to move to Texas. And I was like, I don't think that's true. We should not do that. And here we are. And it's a pattern that's still on repeat. He's doing the things through the weak, through the humble, through the meek, and the people least expected. Those are the ones that are moving the narratives forward in God's direction, not the strong, powerful, ruling type.
So when we're talking about this taking the firstborn, it reminds you of in the Exodus where they kill the firstborn of the beast and the families.
It is an exact chiastic structure. Pharaoh got exactly what he was afraid of, and it ends the very same way he started this whole thing. The whole thing starts because Pharaoh wants to kill the firstborns. The whole way ends because God gave them over to that desire, and killed his firstborns, or anyone that wouldn't follow. Now, what's interesting about that, and what we don't think about, is the fact that we get that the Israelites exodus out of Egypt, but it wasn't just the Israelites. It was the Israelites and any Egyptian that listened to Yahweh. And it's that's another thing that we kind of forget, is that salvation is for anyone. God is willing to. It just requires us listening to His word and not to our own word. There's so much in this.
If
That's
you've ever
so brilliant.
seen Cecil B. DeMille's Ten Commandments, you'll testify to that about the Egyptians going with them. So it's a pretty good show, pretty long, but pretty good.
Which one is this?
Ten Commandments.
Oh, okay.
Cecil B. DeMille was the.
Is that where the "Let My People Go" famous?
Passover.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never seen it.
Wait, you
need
better
to watch it.
invest some
Okay.
time. It's good, but it's long.
Long.
That's a good story.
Interesting.
For-
Interesting. How we doing, host?
We've got 4 people watching. 2 have said hi. Carlene and Tracy.
Good.
No questions. You're gonna have to ask questions, or Scott's gonna keep bringing
Did
up
y'all
stuff.
talk about Esther last Sunday, or was that?
That was yesterday.
That was yesterday.
Yeah, it was yesterday. Impromptu
So I'm kinda
Bible study.
Trying to figure out what y'all talk about Sunday.
So Sunday was
Kind of
the
recap,
yeah.
high level, if you don't mind.
You don't
Yes.
have to go through all of it. but-
So on Sunday we hit the Joseph and the Potiphar's wife.
Right.
And then, so what we did is we compared Joseph's temptation alongside of Judah's temptation. So Judah will be tempted by a woman who he decides to sleep with, and Joseph will be tempted by a woman and he'll choose not to do that. So it's that picture of, again, both seeds. It's setting a trap for us to think Joseph will be the one. And we talked about how over and over and over and over and over again, through repeating words and phrases, we get house is mentioned a whole bunch of times. The house of Potiphar, the house that puts everything over the house, all the way down to the fact that Joseph gets thrown into prison, which the very word is literally the house of roundness. So he's house. God keeps elevating them in this house, in whatever house he's put in. And then how that is important, because house and seed are a promise that were made to God's people through Abraham. He will make his name, his house great. He will, through his land, his people, will be blessings to all the world. And we're reminded at the very first line of chapter 39 that we are not in that promised land. We are in the wrong land, in the wrong house, under the wrong king. God is still moving, but it doesn't mean this is the best way, which is where, again, we're set up for the beginning of the Exodus story later on down the line. But it's clearly trying to get you to see there's a deception that takes place with the garment. The garment has now been used 3 different times to deceive. In chapter 37, they sent the garment to their father and said, identify this, and he identifies it as Joseph's. The garment is used to deceive in Genesis chapter 38. She will veil herself, and then he will actually give articles of his garment, the ring and the staff, to him, and that's what she will use to save her life and to identify his wrongdoing. And then in chapter 39, the garment will be left with Potiphar's wife, and she will use it to she'll say, identify whose this is. This is that Israel who has come to laugh at us. And it will be used to identify the wrongdoing or non-wrongdoing of Joseph again. And so garments are very important. Wrong land, wrong house, very important. Dreams will become very important. And then,
Well, Joseph, he did the temptation he passed,
Mm-hmm.
like Jesus did on several temptations.
Yep.
But you're saying we were food by what this is saying here now? Or what?
So if you're just reading just Joseph without looking at Jesus, you're being set up to think, oh, Joseph's the good guy. Joseph's right here,
Yeah.
which he is. He has absolutely done everything right. But what's happening is underlining, the Bible's trying to get you, just like any good, are you familiar with like psychology at all?
But like David did a lot of bad things.
Yes.
You know.
So the thesis is that man is all broken and all fallen. And it's not as simple as us going, he's good guy and he's bad guy. Because at the end of the day, we're all just human. Now, some of us allow the beast or sin to rule us more so than others. But what they're trying to get you to see is you're trying to find the Savior. And Joseph, if you were to compare the two brothers that have been put up now, Joseph is the clear winner here. Like, he is doing it all right. But just like David, who is a man after God's own heart, he is going to fail. And that simple failure that we will look at in comparison to Judah's failure, we'll still be like, well, that doesn't even seem like a failure. That's not a big deal. Okay, like, what's the big deal there? But that one little failure will lead to, again, thousands enslaved in Egypt. So then it's meant to confuse you because you're supposed to go, well, what? Joseph's a good. What do you mean? Because you're supposed to be going, I can't sit here and make these judgments of who's the right way, what's the wrong way. I can't do it. It doesn't make any sense to me. Thank God he knows what he's doing.
Can't get there through man, period.
Exactly.
No matter what, no matter how good
Exactly.
they are, can't get there
See,
through
like
man.
Yep.
David had a child, the 1st
Mhm.
boy, and now all those tribes are trying
Yeah.
to kill every Jew.
Yep.
So I mean, it's the same kind of.
And it will not be the nations that will kill Jesus. It will be his family that will kill Jesus. It will be his chosen ones, his chosen people, his own high priest, not the Romans. The Romans will enact it, but it will be his people that will send them along. And so, yeah, I just like the idea because our natural tendency is to read the good guy, bad guy narratives, and the Bible's going to be real good at trying to throw all the kinks they can in who's actually good and who's bad. We'll see the Ninevites repent. We'll see Jonah, the prophet of God, not repent, and it just throws everything into a mix up, and it's meant to, because if we only cared about Christians, then the Gentiles need Jesus too. We have to love them too, and the only way we love them is when we realize that they're just as lost as Christians. And if we're just concentrated on the Gentiles, then we're ignoring the ones who are Christian that are just as lost as the Gentile. It's just like we're all fallen, we're all broken, none are righteous. It's going to require one outside of creation to come into creation to fix that problem for us, to bridge that gap, lead us into a new promised land.
Hey, we're up to 8 people.
Whoa.
And Sandy Brandon.
You need to
said
ask
hello.
more questions then.
Hi, Sandy.
If that makes sense.
That's not all we talked about Sunday night.
What else are we talking about?
I don't remember. You got the notes, not me.
I got a bunch of chicken scratch on my Bible.
Here in
I don't
Allison's
know what this means.
webcast, we talked about that.
Yes, we have a podcast that we've started, a new venture, where we're kind of attempting to help, fight biblical illiteracy in the Big C Church today, and so you can find that on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It's called Biblical Bites with a Y, Bites, BYTES, or you can go to any of our Facebook pages.
I'm 12 minutes into it right now.
Are you?
Yeah, I was listening.
It's all
in the car,
downhill
yeah.
from here. For the record, I said Allison would be really good at doing a podcast, so that's the way I envisioned it to go. Not more of Adam's vomit coming on. So, but no,
No,
I'm
y'all do
excited.
well together.
Really,
Y'all work well together.
really,
yeah.
really appreciate any opportunity to talk about the Bible. So, wait till the next ones. We got some good subjects coming up. Shameless plug. Thank you for that. Am I?
Did you ever have any suggestions, since there's more people, about what you talked about earlier about you gonna do the first 11 books of Genesis, or
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
give
John.
them that.
give
yeah.
them a
I've not heard
feel
any
on
feedback other than you just now saying Genesis 1 through 11.
Well, you knew I'd be
So-
for that.
Well, I know where you stand on that
I like
one.
to start from the start myself.
Yeah,
I'm more like he is on.
I'm with you on that.
Chronological stuff.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to want to teach that too, but on the other hand, I also have a tendency to really dwell on the Old Testament, which is totally opposite of where I used to be, just because it's so incredible setting up the problem. And so,
See, we went through the New Testament. We're going back through it again.
mm-hmm.
But that's what they like. That's where they feel like
Yeah,
they need to be.
Yeah.
So, but the history I like too.
yeah,
I don't ever get
yeah,
that.
I'm still real big on the chronological stuff, though, and I know, especially Genesis, we got no idea of when years on a lot of this stuff,
Yeah.
especially pre-Noah. We have no idea,
yeah,
or even when the flood happened.
right.
So, by the way, you got me interested in watching these. What's it called? With where they have the different.
The ancient
Yeah, ancient civilizations, where every one of these civilizations has a flood and or fire and some kind of catastrophic event. Every one of
Yeah.
them. They talk about the Aztecs, and all of these all talk about this flood.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they don't always talk about Noah, but they also always have what I would call a Nephilim that comes in there and saves civilization. I mean,
Yes.
wouldn't you say that?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's definitely. If anybody knows Scott at all, he just really enjoys the
Hey, your
Nephilim
dad's here.
hey Dad, of Genesis chapter, the early books of Genesis. So he likes to talk about that. I have to turn him away from it sometimes.
Well, the real our problem is in our day of I've been to church my whole life, and they steer clear of you didn't ever hear them talk about Genesis, and if you did, when they talk about the sons of God, hey, I'm a son of God. I'm a Christian, so I'm now a son of God. That's what they taught, and that is not what it appears to me what it's
Yeah.
saying. So.
Yeah.
It's all brand new to me, so
Yeah.
it's exciting.
Oh, I've been on that journey too. I get it. I get the excitement of it.
Even Job, right? Well, since you went this morning, it
Yeah.
says something about the sons of God.
Yep. That's a really fun rabbit hole to go down, and yeah. But the point of it is that there's a fallenness of man from heaven and earth. There's a battle going on earth and in the cosmos simultaneously. Like, we're getting a picture of it, and every once in a while we get small glimpses of what's happening in the cosmos. But there is for sure. I mean, think about Ezekiel and or Elijah. In all these visions, and the those who are for us are greater than those against us, and being able to see into that next other dimension where there's a whole battlefield prepared to fight and stuff. And so we get the view of the seed of woman. We get the man side, but there's definitely the seed of the serpent that's also along the way doing their thing. It's who Paul will call the powers of darkness, the principalities, the powers of darkness. Those, we're not fighting against flesh and blood. That's the seed of the woman. We're fighting against something, the ruler of this world right now, the beast. And
Revelation talks about this
Absolutely.
this battle going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sometimes you could just talk about the 3 cosmic battles that you mentioned one Sunday night. That would be really neat to hear. Let's go through each one and the time period and everything and what it entailed.
Yes, the three
He won't
falls.
go through the time period, but he'll go through the three.
Yeah, I won't talk about
Well,
a time period.
I
but
think
yeah,
you
no,
know what
I
I
agree.
mean.
Yes.
This happened around. Yeah, I don't need.
You mean the
Yeah,
three
yeah.
falls in Genesis? Is that what you mean? Yeah. So Jewish Jews believed if we say the fall in Christian circles, they say immediately Adam and Eve, which is absolutely true. But there's actually three falls in ancient Jewish belief in Jews today. There's Adam and Eve narrative, and then there's the flood narrative, and then there's Babel, which all of us, once we kind of think through those, we're like, okay, yeah, there's definitely threes. But all of them have different implications, and all of them have all three, both a human fault and failure and a cosmic or heavenly fault and failure as well. And so you're seeing these along the picture of this happening. So Adam and Eve are going to be tempted by the Nakash, the serpent, which is a play on words, which we can get into if we do the Genesis 1 through 11. It's a triple entendre. So it means shiny ones. It means copper and snake, or like diviner, right? Diviner, snake, and copper, shiny ones. And the Bible will play with that from now on. It'll talk about a serpent, and it'll talk about copper, and but they're all the same words. And the serpent, who in Ezekiel will be called a great guardian cherub, you can associate now the serpent with a heavenly being. So we have a heavenly being who we call Satan, according to the New Testament, will tempt man, and they will both fall. And then in the Noah narrative, you've got the sons of God, who Job will show as a heavenly council, and Satan is a part of that, or the accuser is a part of that council. The sons of God will see the daughters of man, or mankind, and will take for themselves wives, and will do what man was given as a blessing: be fruitful and multiply with them, have children. And these children will be known as the men of the name, the men of renown, the Nephilim. And then that will cause, obviously, mass destruction, mass extinction event, because now the seed of woman is also literally been mixed with corrupted, impure, made impure. And then you'll get to Babel, and Babel is men come together and decide, instead of making God's name great, they will make their own name great. And the founder of Babel will be Nimrod, who is known as a descendant of the Genesis 6 fall. And so you're getting the seed of now the serpent is now also leading mankind into trying to elevate themselves into God's position and place. And this will cause God to scatter them and mix up their language, and choose one people, one family, through whom now this seed will remain pure, but this seed, through this pure seed, will bless all the nations. Problem is that they don't remain pure. They're constantly not listening and constantly intertwining with other cultures and worshiping other gods and causing death and destruction and everything else that we've seen in the pattern of everything else. And so there's three cosmic and earthly rebellions that take place simultaneously, or chronologically, I should say. And then everything that Jesus will do will come and undo all three of those falls, very, very specifically. It'll just be hidden in plain sight in a way. And so he'll go and tell his believers, as before he ascends back into heaven, he'll tell his believers, I want you to go, and I want you to go into all the nations, all people and tongue. All the power that was given to the seed of the serpent here, no, that all authority is now given to me, the Son of God, the one who came through a pregnancy between a woman and divinity, but the right way. And this guy will be the men of the name, but he will be the name above all names. And he'll come and send us out to undo Babel. Think about it. Think about Pentecost. What happens at Pentecost? It's very, very brilliantly working alongside Babel, the outcome of Babel. They're all together in one place. The Holy Spirit comes upon them, and they're all speaking different languages, but everyone can hear one language. And it's a little picture of how the church will now go into all the nations and undo all of these falls, all of these different narratives. And it's brilliant. So, sorry.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Have we lost everybody?
Still got three.
Woohoo! Lauren's
Nobody's
decreased
asking
some of her
any
browser.
questions.
Wrong question.
Joe versus Kathy.
Oh, that's good.
And we're not meeting Sunday,
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes.
the Bible study.
I'm glad you
That's
said
Okay.
the
that.
week we're here.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the
But the
That's
kids
why
are
we're not
coming in to
meeting, so-
find-
that's the Super Bowl. So,
Oh, Super Bowl, I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
so
that-
maybe we'll do a 2-hour the next week and catch up.
That was actually.
Y'all
People-
keep trying. Y'all keep
people-
trying. Y'all keep trying to trying to get me to do that.
Start at
People-
5 instead of 6.
Do you have youth at 5 though?
Yeah, but it's kind of an open forum type situation.
The youth are actually going to your Bible study, it looks like. to
Some
me.
of them.
Yeah, you do
Some
have
of
some. That's neat.
But they've heard it all before. It's actually surprising that they come. They're probably just forced. So
But it's good to get a repeat. You know, when
Yeah.
we review, it helps. It
Mhm.
builds.
oh, there's still things I'm reading in this again, and I've taught. This will be the third time that I've now taught this. I'm still reading things and going, oh, how did I miss that? That was so brilliant. How it's all in there. But anyways, yeah. I think we could probably wrap it up unless somebody else has one more question. Or
Good.
come on, Joe, you're getting more viewers.
I
Joe,
do,
come on.
I do want to say that, all right, so the Bible mentioned even after the flood, the Nephilim were still present.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that happens, but
Mm-hmm.
it says they're still here.
You watched Ancient Civilization. You're the one who saw. We're not giving it.
Well, Goliath was.
It's those
one of
love.
those.
It's those really super lovely things that the Bible loves to just implant in there and then never touch it again. It'll just be the outcomes of those things will take place afterwards, like Babel. Like one of the questions that we talked about yesterday, which I don't have a good answer for, is Cain existed before the flood, and the Kenites, his descendants, exist after the flood. I got nothing on that. I don't know. So that's why I'm not a chronological type timeline guy. So I'll let the smarter people figure those things out. But yeah, it's just
So we've also had that discussion about was the flood worldwide or
I'm not going to talk
regional?
about that.
And then
We have 4 minutes to talk about something that people argue for thousands of years. But
Okay, maybe the Canaanites weren't
yeah.
where the flood was.
Ultimately, I think what's undeniable is that all of those narratives are pointing to the fact that men, when left to themselves, are just going to continue to do the same things over and over and over again. And apparently, those in the heavenlies, those in the heavenly realms, go down the same path. At least a certain amount of them. And so there needs to be a redemption that takes place, and it's going to require a mixture of both the heaven and the earth come together to fix the problem. And I think that's where the pattern, the picture, and literary structure of all of the Bible is kind of trying to get you to. And it's the Titus 3:9 that's like avoid foolish controversies and arguments about the law because they are unprofitable and useless. It's don't get caught up in the weeds of some of that stuff and miss the message behind it. Because when you do, you miss the fact that the women are the reason that the Exodus occur, not Moses, which is very, very earth-shattering when you come to some of those things. And then to watch how women are going to make a major role and play, both Egyptian and Israelite, which, of course, if you remember anything about the Exodus story, Moses is having an identity crisis like crazy. In those opening chapters, he's going to go through an Exodus event himself. He'll go out into the wilderness. He'll wander around and go, who even am I? Whose name am I? And he'll meet I am. He'll meet Yahweh, the name, the first name that we're given, the first time we're given. And then he's going to go back and make Yahweh's name great amongst the Israelites and the Egyptians. And so it's all on repeat. All on repeat, and we're still doing that today. We're so good at going, no, this is our name. We're Baptists, and the Baptists are the ones who are the real Christians, the real followers. And the Methodists, they're lesser names, or whatever it may be. Insert whatever denomination. We're real good about choosing what's right in our eyes and elevating our own names and building our own Babels, and we just don't realize it. But luckily, the underlying issue is that one rules over over that beast and is the one in control, even though we're real good at messing up all those things, or at least presumably messing up all those things with what's right. All right. I think we need to have a go team go break or anything like that. Awesome. Let me pray and then we can go. God, thank you for this day. Thank you for those who are here and who tuned in or who will tune in later. God, I'm thankful that we're given example after example of how it's just never going to really matter about our efforts and our energies and our provisions, because ultimately you're the only thing that matters. You're the one that guides. You're the one that opens doors and allows, and we're thankful that you're the one who wins. God, I just pray that you'll just continue to birth in us a desire to just spend time with you in the Word, that you will begin to continue to make it alive to us, and that we will be on this constant adventure of just discovery of how incredible you are and how you've had this whole thing staked out from before time even began. And we're thankful for that. God, we just ask this in your name. Amen.
Thank you.